So let's start to pay attention to what our society is consuming and what is being sold to us. I'm not just talking about food, but more specifically, what they want us to see. So I remember that when I was younger, in the late 2000s, one thing that I really loved to do, and I'm pretty sure I'm not alone in this, was staying up late night watching TV on my room. Um, I remember that you would find interesting history documentaries, sometimes interesting movies. You had MTV, which I guess it doesn't even exist right now. It doesn't even exist anymore. Um, but there were certain channels that I already knew which were the numbers that would show certain programs where you would have this red circle right corner, I think. This circle indicated that the program was not suitable for children. Um, this obviously filled me with curiosity because I knew I was about to watch either a horror movie or something with naked women. Either one suited me just fine. I knew perfectly well that what I was doing was wrong. I already knew what it meant, so I was okay with that. I knew that I was going to see something that kind of thrilled me, right? Um, I mean, I knew this not only because my parents had already told me, but because every time that I watched something like this, I felt that it awakened something strange in me, like a weird feeling. I only got this feeling from watching this kind of content. So, around the age of 8, 9 years old, I started browsing the internet without any big restriction. I could use YouTube, I could use Google, and I would spend a lot time on these things. Um, Unfortunately, I came across with a website where you would see um, naked women, images of naked women, videos, and all of this stuff. So basically, I stumbled upon a porn website. Remember that I was around 8, 9 years old. So yeah, this is where the real problem started. Being exposed to this kind of content at such a young age, it affected me in ways that I was only able to realize a couple of years ago. So already when I was an adult, young adult. Um, I finally saw how much damage it had done to me, how I viewed women, my understanding of romantic relationships, my performance with women, and especially like in terms of what was the purpose of sex. I knew perfectly well that sex was the way how babies are born, or babies are made in this case. However, I completely kind of forgot about that. I had sex education at school, but still, like it wasn't something that I was constantly thinking like, oh, this is to make babies. I'm gonna have a baby because of this. Quite the opposite. I wasn't even thinking about it, which I guess that a lot of people, especially on that age, will probably think. So around your 14s, 15s, that's where you kind of start engaging on these activities. You don't really think much about it. Maybe you do, I don't know. But I do know that at my time I wasn't really thinking about it. I was only doing it for the pleasure. So yep, I spent a large part of my life with a certain addiction to this material. I thought it was normal. After all, society told me that like male masturbation was totally healthy and actually needed, which only contributed for like to me thinking that I had to keep doing it in order to have like a healthy lifestyle. However, living this way, it was kind of complicated because I felt enslaved by this kind of content. Um, I couldn't control my urge to consume this. Whenever I felt like it, whenever I thought about it, I would eventually on that day, I'm not gonna say right on that moment, but eventually on that day, I would find time to consume this. Um, It wasn't until a few years ago that I realized that there was actually another way to live. Um, I realized I was actually suffering from this addiction, where I started to understand, like, yeah, my way of saying sex isn't like the proper way. It's actually kind of a sick way, you know? And yeah, I understood that I had to do everything possible to change. So, adult content, whether soft or hardcore, has been freely available on the internet for quite some time. And I think that we as a society, we still haven't grasped how dangerous that is, you know? The idea of the red circle was important because it warned adults and, you know, like children who knew that the content that was going to go or that was going to pass on TV, it was inappropriate for minors, because it posed a risk to the child's development, especially in terms of his brain. If we ever wondered, like, but why can't a child watch adult content? We now have the answer. Gen Z and younger generations are showing serious problems stemming from exposure to this content at a very young age. Distorted views of sexuality, issues with neurological development, relational difficulties that can hinder the understanding of consent and boundaries. And, you know, even problems with the self-image. A lot of kids are having big anxiety troubles because of the way how they look and the way how they see people on internet, especially on these kind of videos on porn. Everything seems so exaggerated, and we look at ourselves and we're like, well, I'm nothing like this. This is something that really brings a lot of shame to a lot of people, especially young people, especially teens. Um, I don't know. I don't know if society was aware of this 20 years ago, but the truth is we're seeing a lot of these problems in younger generations. I am living proof. I couldn't control myself with this kind of content. However, with God's help and willpower as well, I can now say that I'm free from that addiction. So the problem with this type of content doesn't stop with children and their development. It also affects adults, both men and women. Today, besides the traditional free websites with thousands of videos and dozens of categories, there is also what we know as OF. I'm not going to say the name because I don't want to promote this kind of content on my video, so everyone knows what that means. And this has become a prevalent option in recent years because, for the most part, men who normally have no contact with women can, for a monthly fee, have contact with multiple women, not only through conversation but also in like an erotic manner. You know, this leads us to another problem for men. That one that is perhaps known, but unfortunately it's not discussed as much. So the 21st century man, if he wants to relive himself, he has at least three options. So he can basically find a partner, develop a loving relationship, and procreate. He can be willing to pay someone in the street or someone on a website like OF, and, well, they basically engage in the act. Or he knows that he can, from his phone or from his laptop, whatever he's using, he can go to one of these websites where you have this, the adult content. And, he can perform the act alone for a few minutes, only to feel the sad sensation of post-nut clarity afterward. A feeling that sometimes makes a man question most of his personal choices, you know? Of these three, the most commonly used is probably the last one. Giving pleasure to oneself is a contract that we literally sign with the devil. Because from that moment on, we understand that we don't need anyone else but ourselves to feel one of life's greatest pleasures. What man throughout his entire history only felt when intimate with a woman, we can now feel as many times as we want during the day. on our own. What's the problem with this? It's that increasingly men see less need to go out, socialize, make an effort to develop as a human being, and actually find a partner. Worse, with the development of technology like artificial intelligence, robotics, men are now looking favorably to the idea of creating a perfect girlfriend. This is literally one of the things that scare me the most, seeing in the next decade or on next 2 decades. Because not only it's completely unnatural, but also because it could easily be the beginning of the end of the human race. On the other hand, women also suffer because of this industry. It is estimated that in 2023, OF generated $5.6 billion. Today, it's practically a gold mine for women. However, it's a cursed gold mine. Very easily, young women from this and the next generation will think, why should I strive in school? Why should I work hard for a successful career when I can simply sell my body on the internet? For some, it's the best deal in history. For others, it's the worst mistake they've ever made. It's not uncommon for you to find videos on YouTube, on the internet, on social media, of former actresses explaining the negative side of this industry. Some of them even expressing deep regrets of ever getting in touch with this. The truth is, once your image is on the internet, it's difficult for you to completely erase it in the future. In this way, the person who creates the content exposes themselves to enormous danger. It's very possible that someone might become so obsessed with your image to the point that they would even try to find you and, I don't know, satisfy some kind of sick fantasy that they have over you. Now I ask, is it really worthy selling your body and exposing yourself to this kind of danger? Not to mention how many men completely reject the idea of having a relationship with a woman who creates this type of content. Imagine meeting that man, the one that you've been looking for, the one that makes you feel safe, the one that makes you laugh, the one that you really like. And he doesn't want to have anything to do with you just because you do this kind of content. Don't tell me this doesn't matter, because the truth is, at the end of the day, we all want to find that person that we can spend the rest of our life with. Beyond this, there is a growing body of serious research showing that compulsive and excessive consumption of pornography can lead to brain and behavioral changes that mimic patterns of addiction. This can cause significant damage to one's sexual life, mental health, and just normal functioning. I think we have liberalized sex too much. And unfortunately, the social medias don't really help you at all. Because it's too easy for a random person who created Instagram or even Facebook recently to have the algorithm make them watch some kind of soft porn content. And sometimes, even content with children on it, which is one of the weirdest parts. Because I remember that when I was a kid, for you to actually watch some kind of, this disgusting content, you had to go to like deep web, you had to go to this really underground websites where you could see really, really disgusting stuff. But nowadays, it's too easy. You can see children dancing in sexual ways on the internet. Sometimes even the parents are the ones who are recording it with completely not recommended clothes, very revealing clothes. And this is something that I'm not 100% sure if society has already grasped how dangerous that is. Or perhaps they do. Perhaps someone understands exactly where this might take society to. Um, maybe, maybe they want the human being to become addicted to this. Maybe they want us to think about sex 24/7, not for its real purpose, but to create a society where the limits of sexual pleasure are impossible to find. Maybe something like what the Bible describes in Sodom and Gomorrah. The truth is that this industry has completely distorted the nature of the sexual act, which is so fundamental to human beings, not only for the pleasure that it provides and the good that it does to a healthy relationship, but also for the importance that it has on the continuation of our species. God said in Genesis 1:28, "Be fruitful and multiply." This is something that we must take into account. He didn't forbid us from performing the act, but He asked that we do it the right way and with a specific purpose, to multiply the human race and to keep the relationship between a couple healthy. So for now, let's ask ourselves this. As a society, do we have a healthy relationship with sex? And if not, how can we build one? Let me know what you think. See you another day.